So what we're going to do is take a look at these beef heads. Before I tell you much, can anybody tell me what the appropriate landmarks are that we're going to use in order to place a stun? Outside of the eyes to the opposite pole, right? And so if we draw an X across here from the outside of the eye, so right here, up to the opposite side of the pole, we're about right on the money with this one. That's good. We can barely make out the entrance wound from this captive bolt device. You'll see just a little spot up there on the head of the animal. So now we can lay this open. We'll see how much brain damage took place. This is where it might be kind of tough for you guys to see, but we can see the entrance hole here. So the point of entrance for that bolt was like that. You guys can see the brain, right? Is this good location? This is really good. That's a nice shot. Well done. All right, let's take a look at another beef head. Okay, if we draw our X here from the outside corner of the eye up to the pole, so we're here and here. This one looks like it might be like just a touch low, but I don't know that it's enough that it's necessarily going to affect anything. Let's split it open and take a look. Entrance wound is here. Good shot? Yep. Really good shot. This is perfect. So the take-home message here, guys, that I want to share with you is that when we're placing captive bolt shots with cattle, that landmark, outside corner of the eye to the opposite pole, that's a good landmark to use. In the case of dairy animals, Holsteins in particular, make sure that you place that shot slightly higher. I usually tell, as a rule of thumb, about 2 finger widths. I know that varies between people, so if you want something that's a little more precise, about an inch to an inch and a quarter. That'll get you in the right neighborhood. Next thing to cover with you. Does anybody pole stun? Like behind the pole? Okay. So I'll go over that one with you just so you know what it looks like. So if we're going to stun behind the pole, we're going to take our captive bolt device, we're going to place it tightly in the hollow behind the pole back here. You guys know there's a ridge. I'm just going to leave this one down and we'll work with this one right here. There's a ridge right here on the animal. There's some hide that's over top of this. There's like this hollow back here. It's actually a place where cattle really love to be scratched, actually, because they can't reach that point themselves. But anyway, that's the spot where you would place your captive bolt gun. Now, if you're going to stun behind the pole, your target should be just in front of this 90-degree turn in the jaw or in the mandible. So you want to be aiming for about right here, and you want to make sure you're lined up right in the middle, like you're trying to go right through the middle of the head. If you do that, so you can see here's our 90-degree turn right here. If we're aiming for this point right here, you can also aim for the base of the tongue if that helps you to visualize things a little bit better. Our bolt gun's going to be about right here. And so we're going to end up passing right there. This causes an extensive amount of brainstem damage. The change in intracranial pressure when that bolt punctures through the cranium will cause that animal to lose consciousness because you're going to induce a concussion. The issue with this type of stunning, though, is that you won't create as much damage to the cerebral cortex. That's this upper part right here. That's the part where the animal will get consciousness from. And so that's one of the potential issues with doing the pole stun. Yes, sir?
At our slaughterhouse, we used to do bone knocking. We had one gentleman who was really good at it. The USDA really frowned upon it, at least at our shop, and said that you can sever the spinal cord and not get the brain paralyzed.
Okay.
Does that happen often? Is it doing it wrong?
The potential exists. I mean, you guys can see this here if you look at it. So if we get our captive bolt, if we get pretty sloppy with this and we get further back, there's a chance you could cut the spinal cord. You're going to see it. You're going to see it because you should be able to get corneal reflexes on that animal. The head is going to act completely normal. The rest of the body isn't going to move. So that's kind of an indicator that something went wrong. If you captive bolt stun an animal and you see absolutely zero movement from that animal at all, no involuntary kicking, be nervous. You should be. As a matter of fact, I'd place another shot if I saw an animal that was completely still after a captive bolt shot. You should expect to see a little bit of movement. That's normal. Involuntary kicking is normal. Are there any other questions at this point? All right. What I'm going to do is after I go through all these heads, I'm going to give you guys the opportunity, if you want, to stop down here and take a few pictures if you want them. That way you can use these as sort of some training materials. The other thing too is if you want other pictures, we have a pretty extensive library back at my university that I can share with you as well, if you just take down my contact information at the end of the day today. So let's move on to pigs. Question number 1. How was this pig stunned? It was electric. There's no wound. If you look at the location of the brain, what I want you to notice is that the brain is located above and behind the eye. That's where it's located in the case of swine. You can see we've got this really thick frontal plate of the skull right here. Let's do a quick comparison. We'll grab, this one, we'll grab this one here. Okay, what I want you to look at is the bone thickness at the front of the head right here on this beef head. Compare that to the thickness of the bone on the front of the pork head. You see how this one is even slightly thicker? Okay, so that's the challenge. We have got to have enough power to pass whatever we're trying to stun a swine with through that frontal plate of the skull. So with that said, in a lot of cases, a 22 long is not your best load if you're going to use a firearm in this case. Minimum of a 22 Magnum. Minimum. A 410 with a slug is a really great option if you're going to use a firearm. So you can see in the case of pigs, the brain is smaller in size, so you have a smaller target that you're shooting for overall. In the case of the bovine, that brain's about the size of my fist. In the case of the swine, you can see it's quite a bit smaller actually. It's kind of about the size of like a tennis ball. It's like a squash tennis ball. Now, if we're going to place our shot, we got to look at our landmarks again. So in the case of pigs, if I'm going to stun from the front, what's my landmark? Line across the top of the eyes, and then an inch above that, right? So let's take a look at that. So if I draw my line here, and I go an inch above, so I'm right here, my bolt should pass just like that, right?
I thought you said to go parallel with the spinal cord.
We can go parallel with the spinal cord as well. That's going to tip you in just a little bit like that, because most of the time these animals are standing about like this. You'll see, you'll be pretty close to 90 degrees most of the time when you place that shot. You want to make sure that whenever you're placing your device, though, you don't get too much of an angle. You can angle just a little bit, but if you angle too much, even the bolt on your captive bolt gun could just graze the skull. And so I wouldn't recommend tipping too much, but a little bit's all right. So that's going from the front. Now, the other way that some people will stun pigs is they'll come in behind the ear. This method works really nice, actually, if you're not restraining your pigs. So you can kind of sneak up on them in this case. But you really got to get good at it. So here's the way that you do this. You're going to take your captive bolt gun. You're going to place right at the base of the ear, down here. You're aiming for the opposite eye, right here. When we place that shot coming across that point, we end up passing right through the brainstem, and we might knock out some of the cerebral cortex as well. So right through the brainstem, across the cerebral cortex. Remember that this is a small target, so you really got to make sure that you're lined up appropriately, because if you tip your gun a little bit, there's a chance you could miss your target. So you got to be really careful here. Are there any questions so far? Yeah.
Will that make the animal not move then like electric shocking, or will they still thrash?
No, they'll still thrash.
Okay.
So if you decide to stun a pig behind the ear, they'll still thrash, and you want to see that. Like if you're going to use mechanical stunning on any animal, you want to see involuntary kicking. That's normal. You also want to assess signs of consciousness. The go-to sign that I always use is corneal reflex. Touch the eye. I will always touch the eye in animals that have been shot with a firearm or a captive bolt gun. With electrically stunned animals, I don't do that. With electrically stunned animals, I actually look more for rhythmic breathing, expansion and contraction of the rib cage, as well as just normal looking around and blinking. The reason we don't touch eyes on pigs that are electrically stunned is because for some reason that brainstem reflex hangs around for a while even after the animal is dead. Any other questions? Yes?
I want to add, not all beef are created equal. Texas Longhorns, Scottish Highlanders have a fighter plate on front of that brain skull.
Mm-hmm. So you got to have enough power to get through it, right?
Two skulls, not just one.
Yeah, so just to repeat the point, some cattle are going to have a thicker frontal plate than others. And so that is a good point for you to mention. I appreciate you doing that. So you got to make sure that you're picking a means of stunning that is actually going to get through that frontal plate. Because if you don't get to the brain, you're not going to achieve the outcome that you're looking for. You're not going to get that effective stun.